3 months from now, Serafina Ashenvale would stand before an entire kingdom wearing a crown of silver moonlight. 3 Alpha Kings would kneel at her feet, pledging their lives, their loyalty, their souls to her reign. The great hall of Frost Peak would echo with the howls of wolves celebrating their moon-blessed queen. But tonight she was still just the ghostling, the defective Omega, the girl nobody wanted. The harvest moon hung heavy and orange over Silverwood Pack territory in Northern California. 200 wolves gathered in the ceremonial clearing, their excitement crackling through the autumn air like static electricity. This was the night young wolves had dreamed about since childhood. The mating ceremony. The moment when fate revealed your destined partner, your other half, your forever. Serafina stood at the edge of the crowd trying to make herself invisible. Not an easy task when you look like her. Snow-white hair cascaded down her back, so pale it seemed to glow under the moonlight. Porcelain skin that had never seen a tan, never darkened, never looked remotely normal. And her eyes, those cursed amethyst eyes that marked her as different from the moment she'd opened them and as an infant. Albinism, the pack doctor had said. A genetic mutation, harmless in humans, but in werewolves. In werewolves, it meant something was fundamentally broken. Because Serafina couldn't shift, 23 years old, and she'd never once felt her wolf emerge, never experienced the transformation that defined their entire species. She was Omega without a wolf, a car without an engine, a gun without bullets. Useless. The ceremony begins, Elder Matthias announced, his voice carrying across the clearing. Let those who have reached maturity step forward. The harvest moon will reveal your destined bonds. Serafina's stomach twisted. She shouldn't have come, but her mother had insisted, hope still flickering in Alara Ashenvale's tired eyes despite everything. Despite the cancer eating through her pancreas. Despite the medical bills that had consumed their savings, and then some. Despite knowing her daughter was different, broken wrong. You never know, sweetheart. Alara had whispered that morning, her thin hand squeezing Serafina's fingers. The moon goddess works in mysterious ways. So here she stood, wearing a simple white dress that made her skin look even paler, made her look even more like a ghost. The ghostling. That's what the pack children called her when they thought she couldn't hear. Some of the adults used it too, voices low but not low enough. The unmated wolves formed a circle, males on one side, females on the other. Serafina found herself near the back between 2 beta females who immediately shifted away from her, as if whatever was wrong with her might be contagious. She'd stopped being hurt by things like that years ago, had built walls around the soft parts of herself, learned to keep her face blank, her spine straight, her head high, even when everything inside her screamed to run and hide. Then she felt it, the pull. It started as warmth in her chest, spreading outward, like someone had poured hot honey into her veins. Her breath caught. Every nerve ending suddenly came alive, aware, reaching towards something, towards someone. Across the circle, standing among the alpha males, Draven Blackthorn turned his head. Their eyes met. The bond snapped into place like a physical force. Serafina gasped, actually staggered, had to lock her knees to keep from falling. This was it. The mate bond, the thing every wolf dreamed of. The cosmic connection that bound 2 souls together for eternity. Draven Blackthorn. 26 years old, 6 feet 3 inches of pure alpha power. Dark hair, sharp features, eyes the color of aged whiskey. Son of the pack alpha, heir to leadership. Strong, respected, capable. And according to the moon goddess herself, destined to be hers. For one perfect, shimmering moment, Serafina let herself hope. Let herself imagine that maybe, just maybe, the goddess had a plan. That her differences didn't matter. That love could transcend the physical, the practical, the expectations of an entire pack. She watched Draven's face, waiting for recognition, for joy, for anything that mirrored the overwhelming rightness she felt burning through her chest. Instead, she watched his expression shift from surprise to confusion to something that made her blood run cold. Disgust. He looked at her like she was something rotten he'd discovered under a rock. Like she was an insult, a cosmic joke at his expense. The hope inside her chest shattered like glass. No, Draven said loud enough that wolves near him turned to stare. Absolutely not. Elder Matthias frowned. Alpha Draven, if the bond is manifested, I don't care what manifested. Draven's voice carried across the clearing, now drawing every eye. This is a mistake, some kind of error. Serafina felt her face burning, but she kept it expressionless through years of practice, 200 pairs of eyes boring into her. Whispers starting like rustling leaves. She can't even shift, someone muttered. The ghostling is future Luna. That's impossible. Poor Draven, what terrible luck. Her fingers curled into fists at her sides, nails biting into palms. Don't react. Don't give them the satisfaction. Don't let them see it hurts. Draven strode to the center of the circle, commanding attention without effort. Alpha energy radiated from him, making lesser wolves instinctively lower their eyes. He was everything an alpha should be, everything she wasn't. I invoke my right of rejection, he announced. The whispers stopped. The entire clearing went silent. Rejection was rare, almost unheard of. To reject a mate bond meant going against the moon goddess herself. It was considered taboo, dangerous, a slight against nature. But it was allowed, technically, if an alpha deemed his designated mate truly unsuitable. Elder Matthias looked uncomfortable. Draven, perhaps you should take time to consider. I've considered. Draven's jaw was set, his decision made. He turned to face Seraphina directly, and she forced herself to meet his eyes. To not look away, to not give him that victory too. I, Draven Blackthorn, Alpha Designate of Silverwood Pack, hereby reject the mate bond with Seraphina Ashenvale. The words hit like physical blows. Seraphina felt something tear inside her chest, the bond that had just formed now being ripped apart. It hurt. God, it hurt worse than anything she'd ever experienced. Like someone was pulling her heart out through her ribcage. But she didn't make a sound, didn't flinch, didn't give them the tears they expected. Draven continued, voice ringing with conviction, with certainty, with absolute contempt. You are weak, defective, unable to perform the most basic function of our species. You cannot shift. You cannot bear strong pups. You cannot lead beside an alpha. You are a stain on our bloodline, a mutation, a mistake of nature. Each word was chosen to wound, to humiliate, to destroy whatever dignity she had left. You are unworthy of standing as Luna of this pack. Unworthy of the Blackthorn name, unworthy of me. Seraphina's vision blurred at the edges, but she blinked it clear. She would not cry. Not here, not in front of them, not ever. She found her voice surprised it came out steady. Is that all? Draven looked momentarily thrown by her calm. He'd expected tears, begging, perhaps rage. Instead, she stood there looking at him like he was something mildly disappointing, but ultimately insignificant. The rejection is noted, Elder Matthias said quietly, clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation. The bond is severed. And just like that, it was done. The warmth in her chest went cold and hollow. The connection disappeared like it had never existed. Seraphina was alone again, untethered, unwanted. The crowd erupted in whispers and speculation and poorly hidden satisfaction. Watching someone fall was always more interesting than watching them succeed, especially when that someone had never belonged in the first place. Seraphina turned and walked away. Not running, though everything in her screamed to flee. Just walking, measured steps, head high, shoulders back. She could feel their eyes on her back, could hear the murmurs. I knew this would happen. Imagine thinking the ghostling could be Luna. She should have stayed home. At least Draven was honest, better than being stuck with her forever. She made it to the tree line before her legs started shaking. Made it another 100 yards into the forest before she had to stop, one hand braced against rough bark, breathing hard. The pain in her chest was physical, actual, real. Worse than any injury she'd ever sustained. The mate bond severing felt like losing a limb, like having part of her soul carved out and discarded. But underneath the pain was something else, something harder, colder, more resilient. Relief. Because now she knew. Now there was no more hoping, no more wondering if maybe someday things would be different. Now she knew exactly where she stood. Rejected, cast aside, free from the delusion that she might ever truly belong here. Footsteps approached. Seraphina straightened, wiping her face, though no tears had fallen, composing herself. Her younger brother Rowan appeared through the trees. 19 years old, normal brown hair and eyes able to shift since he was 15, like every other healthy wolf. Everything she wasn't. Sarah, his voice was gentle, careful. I'm sorry. Don't be. She kept her tone light, dismissive. It's fine. It's not fine. He was cruel. Unnecessarily cruel. He was honest. Seraphina looked at her brother, seeing the anger on her behalf, the protective fury. Rowan had always defended her, even when it cost him socially. Even when other wolves mocked him for having a defective sister. What are you going to do? He asked. Good question. What did rejected Omegas do? Where did they go when their own pack had witnessed their ultimate humiliation? I don't know yet, she admitted. Go home, deal with it, move forward. But when she returned to their small house on the edge of pack territory, she found that moving forward wasn't going to be an option. Her father Theron sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands. The scent of whiskey hung heavy in the air despite the early hour. Bills covered every surface, red stamps screaming, past due, final notice, payment required. Her mother lay in bed in the next room, sleeping restlessly, body ravaged by cancer they couldn't afford to treat. The experimental protocol that might save her cost $850,000. Their insurance had capped out at $200,000. The rest impossible, unattainable, a fantasy. Rowan's scholarship to MIT covered tuition but not living expenses. $60,000 a year just to house and feed himself while getting the education that could change his life. Money they didn't have. And Theron's gambling debts. $320,000 owed to the casino on the Indian reservation 2 hours south. Money borrowed desperately, foolishly, trying to save Alara when conventional medicine had failed. Money now owed to people who didn't accept excuses or extensions. Serafina looked at the ruins of her family and felt something crystallize inside her, a decision forming without conscious thought. She couldn't save herself, couldn't fix what was broken inside her, couldn't make wolves see her as anything but defective. But maybe she could save them. The letter arrived 2 days later. Heavy parchment, expensive quality, sealed with dark blue wax stamped with an unfamiliar crest. 3 wolves intertwined, crowned with stars. Serafina turned it over in her hands, frowning. No return address, just her name written in elegant script across the front. She broke the seal. To the one called Ghostling, we have heard of your rejection. We have seen what others are blind to. What they call defect, we call rarity. What they call weakness, we call potential. You are moon-blessed bloodline, though you do not yet know it. Your inability to shift is not curse, but chrysalis. You wait for the right catalyst. Come north to Frost Peak, Alaska. Your true destiny awaits. The bond you lost was never meant to be. The bonds you are owed still wait to form. We can offer you what you need. In return, you need only come and see what you truly are. The triad beneath the words was a phone number and an address in Alaska. Serafina read it 3 times, looking for the trick, the scam, the trap. But something in her chest responded to those words. Moon-blessed, true destiny, the bonds you are owed. She researched Frost Peak that night, a packed territory in the Alaskan wilderness, isolated and powerful, ruled by triplet Alpha Kings, a rare and potent bloodline. No scandals, no corruption, no red flags, just strength, stability, and mystery. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. The letter arriving exactly when her family needed saving most, when she had nothing left to lose. 24 hours after receiving the letter, the Pack Council summoned her. Elder Matthias delivered the decree with apologetic eyes but firm voice. The council has decided that your continued presence in Silverwood territory is problematic. Given the circumstances of your rejection, it would be best for all parties if you relocated. Translation: get out. You embarrass us. Your presence reminds Draven of his rejection, and we can't have the future Alpha uncomfortable. You have 72 hours to remove yourself and your belongings from Packlands. Exile. They were exiling her, dressing it up in polite language, but the message was clear: leave or be forcibly removed. Serafina had expected this, had actually planned for it. She pulled the letter from her pocket, smooth and ready. I've received an invitation from Frost Peak Pack in Alaska. I'll be gone within 48 hours. Matthias looked surprised, then relieved. That's acceptable. Good. Safe travels, Serafina. She wondered if he knew how hollow those words sounded. Safe travels to the girl they were casting out. Good luck to the Omega they'd decided wasn't worth keeping. That night, she sat with her mother. Alara had woken enough to understand what was happening, tears sliding down her too thin cheeks. I'm so sorry, baby. This is my fault. If I wasn't sick, if we didn't need the money. Stop. Serafina took her mother's fragile hand. None of this is your fault. And I'm not leaving because of you. I'm leaving because it's time. Because staying here means staying broken. Maybe somewhere else I can be different. She didn't tell her mother about the strange letter, the promises, the destiny supposedly waiting in Alaska. Didn't want to build hope that might collapse. But she wired half her savings to her father that night with instructions. Use this for Mom's next treatment. I'll send more soon. She told Rowan about the letter, watching his MIT-educated mind analyze every angle. It could be legitimate, he said slowly. The Frost Peak Pack is real, powerful, respected. But Sarah, Alaska is 2,000 miles away. You'd be completely alone, and we don't know what they want from you. I know what I want from them, Serafina said. A chance to be something other than the ghostling. A chance to save this family. And honestly, Rowan, I have nothing left to lose. Her brother pulled her into a tight hug. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me if anything feels wrong, you'll run. I promise. She packed light. One suitcase of clothes, a box of photos, her mother's recipe book, her grandmother's silver locket. Everything she owned fit in the back of her 12-year-old Toyota with room to spare. The night before she left, she drove past the Blackthorn house, saw lights blazing, heard laughter and music. Draven was probably inside celebrating his narrow escape from being tied to a defective Omega forever. She didn't feel anger, didn't feel heartbreak. Just a cold, clear certainty that he'd made his choice and she'd made hers. His loss. 47 hours after the council's decree, Serafina Ashenvale crossed the Silverwood Pack border for the last time. In her rearview mirror, the only home she'd ever known disappeared behind curves in the road. Ahead, 1,200 miles of highway stretched toward Alaska, toward Frost Peak, toward whatever destiny or disaster waited in the frozen north. She drove through the night, stopping only for gas and bathroom breaks. Drove through California, through Oregon, through Washington into Canada. The landscape changed, gradually became wilder, emptier, more primal. She crossed into Alaska 3 days later, exhausted, but wired, running on coffee and stubborn determination. The address led her deep into the mountains, hours from the nearest town. Snow already dusted the peaks, despite it only being October. The road became rougher, narrower, until she wondered if she'd made a wrong turn. Then she saw it. Frost Peak Castle rose from the mountainside like something from a fairy tale. Stone towers peaked roofs, walls that looked ancient and impenetrable. Northern lights danced green and purple across the sky above it, nature's spotlight on this impossible place. Serafina stopped the car, staring. This was real. This place actually existed. And somewhere inside those walls, something was waiting for her. She drove the final mile to the main gate. Before she could figure out how to announce herself, the massive doors swung open. An invitation, or a trap, only one way to find out. Serafina drove through heart-pounding, hands steady on the wheel. The courtyard was enormous, designed to hold hundreds of wolves. Empty now except for 3 figures standing in a line waiting. 3 identical men. Serafina parked and stepped out of her car, suddenly aware of how she must look. Rumpled from days of driving, pale, even in the Arctic cold, white hair whipping in the wind. The ghostling arriving at the Castle of Kings. But she lifted her chin and walked toward them, refusing to appear weak or afraid. As she got closer, details emerged. They were identical triplets, tall and broad-shouldered, built like warriors, late 20s, maybe 30. But their eyes were different colors, the only way to tell them apart. The one in the middle had silver-gray eyes that seemed to look straight through her, reading thoughts she hadn't spoken. Strategic intelligence radiated from him like heat. The one on the left had storm-blue eyes, restless and intense energy barely contained under rigid control. A fighter's stance, a warrior's alertness. The one on the right had ice-blue eyes, calm as winter lakes, steady and assessing. An anchor among storms. All 3 were devastatingly handsome in that unreal way that marked powerful alphas. But more than that, they radiated authority. These weren't just pack members. These were rulers, leaders, kings. And all 3 were staring at her with expressions she couldn't read. The one with silver-gray eyes stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was deep and controlled, every word measured. Serafina Ashenvale, welcome to Frost Peak. I am Cade Frostborn. These are my brothers Riker and Asher. We've been waiting for you. Waiting for her. The ghostling. The defective Omega. The girl nobody wanted. Serafina met his gaze directly, searching for mockery, for pity, for the disgust she'd learned to expect. Instead, she found something that made her breath catch. Hunger. Interest. Recognition. Like he was seeing something in her that no one else ever had. Why? The question came out before she could stop it. Why would 3 Alpha Kings want anything to do with me? Cade's lips curved into the ghost of a smile. Because you're not what they told you that you were. You're not broken, Serafina. You're dormant. There's a difference, Osemesh. He extended his hand toward her. Come inside. We have a great deal to discuss. And I think very soon you're going to understand exactly what you are. Serafina looked at his outstretched hand, at the castle rising behind him, at the 3 brothers watching her with identical expressions of certainty, as if they knew secrets about her own soul that she'd never discovered. She thought about Draven's rejection, about her family's desperate need, about the voice inside her that had screamed for 23 years that she was supposed to be more than this, more than broken, more than wrong. She thought about the letter's promise. Your true destiny awaits. Serafina placed her hand in Cade's. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid and real. The moment their skin touched, she felt it. The pull, the rightness, the click of pieces falling into place. Not like before. Not like the bond with Draven that had been bright and brief and ultimately false. This was deeper, ancient, inevitable as sunrise. And it wasn't coming from just Cade. She felt it from Riker too, storm blue eyes widening in recognition, from Asher ice blue eyes softening with something like wonder. Three bonds, three connections, three threads of destiny wrapping around her heart. Seraphina's lips parted in shock. What is this? This, Cade said softly, thumb brushing across her knuckles in a gesture that sent electricity up her arm, is what you came here to find. He drew her toward the castle entrance, his brothers flanking them, creating a protective triangle around her, like she was something precious, something worth guarding. Welcome home, Seraphina Ashenvale. Welcome to Frost Peak. Welcome to the beginning of everything you were always meant to be. The massive doors closed behind them, shutting out the cold Alaskan night. Inside, warmth waited, and destiny, and three Alpha Kings who looked at the ghostling and saw a queen. The interior of Frost Peak Castle defied every expectation Seraphina had formed during her 3-day drive north. She'd imagined something cold, austere, perhaps militaristic. Instead, warmth enveloped her the moment she stepped through the threshold. Stone walls were softened by tapestries depicting wolf hunts under full moons, ancient battles, ceremonial gatherings. Fires blazed in enormous hearths, casting dancing shadows across polished floors. The scent of pine and wood smoke, and something else, something wild and clean, filled the air. But more overwhelming than the physical space was the sensation flooding through her body. Three distinct pulls, three separate threads of connection all converging in her chest, where the mate bond with Draven had been so recently torn away. Except these bonds felt nothing like that one had. That had been a spark, bright and brief. These were foundations, deep roots, ancient trees that had been growing toward this moment for lifetimes. Seraphina stopped walking, one hand pressed to her sternum, trying to process what she was feeling. Cade's presence registered as winter pine and controlled power, sharp intellect and patient strategy. Riker radiated like a banked fire, all smoke and leather and barely restrained intensity. Asher felt like mountain rain, steady and calm and impossibly deep. I don't understand. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. The mate bond is supposed to be singular. One person, one connection, not. She gestured helplessly at all three of them. Cade released her hand but stayed close, giving her space while remaining within reach. The mate bond is typically singular, yes. For typical wolves. You, Seraphina, are not typical. I'm defective, she said automatically, the word bitter and familiar on her tongue. No. Riker's voice was rough, almost angry. You're rare. There's a difference. Asher moved to stand beside his brothers, creating a line of identical faces with different colored eyes, all focused on her with unsettling intensity. Come, sit. This conversation requires time and explanation. They led her deeper into the castle through corridors lined with portraits of previous rulers into a private sitting room dominated by a massive fireplace. Comfortable chairs were arranged in a semicircle facing the flames. Nothing about the space felt formal or intimidating. It felt lived in, safe. Seraphina sank into one of the chairs, grateful because her legs had started shaking. 3 days of driving with minimal rest suddenly caught up with her, combined with the adrenaline crash of arriving, of feeling these impossible bonds, of not knowing what came next. Cade poured amber liquid into a crystal glass and handed it to her. Drink, it'll help. She sipped. Whiskey, smooth and expensive, burned pleasantly down her throat and settled the worst of the tremors. The three brothers took seats facing her, close enough for conversation, but far enough to not crowd. Everything about their body language suggested they were trying not to overwhelm her. Too late for that. She was already drowning. Start at the beginning, Seraphina said, forcing her voice steady. Who are you? What is this place, and why did you send me that letter? Cade leaned forward, elbows on knees, silver gray eyes never leaving her face. We are the Triad. Triplet alphas born to rule Frost Peak Kingdom jointly. Our father was king before us, our grandfather before him. The bloodline goes back 900 years. Joint rule, Seraphina frowned. I've never heard of alphas sharing power like that. Because it's exceptionally rare, Asher explained, his calmer tone balancing his brother's intensity. Alpha triplets occur perhaps once every 5 generations. When they do, they're bonded not just as siblings but as a unit, 3 parts of a whole, incomplete, alone, devastating together. Riker picked up the thread. For centuries, triad alphas took multiple mates, a bond with each brother separate and distinct. But 18 months ago, we received a prophecy. Seraphina's skepticism must have shown on her face because Cade smiled slightly. You don't believe in prophecies. I don't believe in much of anything anymore, she admitted. The moon goddess supposedly designs fate, but she paired me with someone who found me repulsive. Forgive me if I'm not inclined to trust divine intervention. Draven Blackthorn is a fool, Riker said flatly, and his rejection was necessary for you to be here now. How comforting, Seraphina muttered into her whiskey. Asher's expression softened with something like sympathy. The prophecy came through our seer, Elder Lyanna. She's never been wrong in 60 years of visions. She told us this. When White Wolf walks under Frostpeak Moon, 3 kingdoms unite as one. The dormant will wake, the rejected will reign. 3 bonds converge in a single soul. The words sent chills down Seraphina's spine despite the fire's warmth. She set down her glass with careful precision. White Wolf, you think that's me? I can't shift. I've never shifted. I'm 23 years old and I don't even know if I have a wolf inside me. You do. Cade's certainty was absolute. Your wolf isn't absent, Seraphina. She's sleeping, waiting for the right catalyst to wake her. And you think that catalyst is you, all 3 of you. She heard the edge in her own voice, the defense mechanism rising. This was too much, too big, too impossible. We think, Cade said carefully, that the moon goddess doesn't make mistakes. She makes plans. Draven rejected you because you were never meant for him. You were meant for us, all 3 of us. A triad mate for a triad of alphas. Seraphina stood abruptly, needing to move to pace to do something with the energy crackling under her skin. This is insane. You invited me here based on a prophecy about a white wolf when I can't even shift. You talk about destiny and fate when you don't even know me. I could be anyone. Anything. You're not anyone. Riker stood too, and God, he was tall, broad, radiating that barely controlled intensity that made her want to step closer and run away simultaneously. We've been watching you for months, Seraphina. Not creeping, not stalking, just aware. When the prophecy came, we started paying attention to rumors of wolves who didn't fit the standard mold. Your name kept appearing. The defective Omega of Silverwood, she said bitterly. The moon-blessed bloodline hidden in plain sight, Asher corrected quietly. Your albinism isn't a mutation. It's a marker. The ancient text described the moon-blessed as having skin like starlight and eyes like amethyst stone, as being unable to shift until the proper bonds formed, as possessing abilities that transcended typical wolf senses. Seraphina's hand went unconsciously to her throat, to the pulse fluttering there. I don't have special abilities. I'm just broken differently than most people. Can you sense emotions? Kate asked. Not just reading body language, but actually feeling what others feel. She opened her mouth to deny it, then stopped. Because yes, she'd always been able to do that. Had thought everyone could until she'd mentioned it at age 7 and been told normal wolves didn't work that way. Sometimes, she admitted reluctantly. Can you see in complete darkness? Riker pressed. Not just better than humans, but actually see clearly when there's no light source at all. Her eyes had always worked that way. She'd assumed it was an albinism quirk, the lack of pigment affecting her vision somehow. Yes. Can you hear heartbeats from distances that shouldn't be possible? Asher's ice blue eyes were gentle but relentless. Track people not by scent, but by the unique rhythm of their pulse. Seraphina sank back into the chair legs, suddenly weak. How do you know these things about me? Because they're documented abilities of the moon-blessed bloodline, Cade said. A lineage thought extinct 300 years ago. But bloodlines don't disappear, Seraphina. They just sleep, waiting for the right generation, the right circumstances, the right bonds to reawaken them. She stared at the fire, watching flames devour wood, transforming solid matter into light and heat and ash, destruction and creation simultaneously. Why me? The question came out barely above a whisper. Even if everything you're saying is true, even if I'm this moon-blessed bloodline, why do you want me? You're kings. You could have anyone. Why choose someone broken? You're not broken. All 3 of them said it simultaneously, voices overlapping, creating an echo that resonated in her chest. Cade knelt in front of her chair, bringing himself to eye level. This close, she could see flecks of darker gray in his silver eyes, could smell the winter pine scent that clung to him, could feel the heat radiating from his body. Listen to me, Seraphina. You have been told lies your entire life, that you're defective, wrong, less than. But the only thing wrong was the wolves telling you those things. They couldn't see what you are because they were looking for the wrong markers. They wanted a wolf who shifted at 15, who fit their narrow definition of normal. They missed the extraordinary because they were obsessed with the ordinary. His hand moved slowly, telegraphing the motion, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her cheek with devastating gentleness. We see you, Seraphina Ashenvale. Not what you can't do, what you can, what you will, who you're meant to become. The touch sent electricity through her entire nervous system. The bond flared, that thread connecting her to him, suddenly vivid and real and impossible to deny. She pulled back, needing distance, needing clarity. You said you could help me. The letter said you could offer me what I needed. What does that mean? Specifically, Cade sat back on his heels, giving her space again, always reading her, responding to unspoken cues. It means we're prepared to support your family financially. Your mother's cancer treatment, your brother's education, your father's debts. All of it. Seraphina's breath caught. That's over $1 million. We're aware, Riker said from where he leaned against the mantel. Money isn't an issue for us. Frost Peak Kingdom is wealthy. We have investments, resources, territory rights. $1 million is nothing compared to finding our destined mate. Mates, Asher corrected softly. Singular. You're mate to all three of us. One bond, three anchors. The implications made her head spin. You're saying you'd pay over $1 million for what? What would you expect in return? Time, Cade said simply. Time to let the bonds develop. To train with our pack, learn what you're capable of, see if what we feel is genuine and lasting. And if after all that you decide this isn't what you want, you walk away. The money remains with your family regardless. It was too generous, too perfect. There had to be a catch. Why would you risk that? What if I take the money and leave immediately? Riker's smile was sharp. Then we'd know the bonds were false and the prophecy wrong. But they're not. You feel it too, Seraphina. I can see it in how you respond when we get close, in how your pulse jumps when we touch you, in how you're fighting yourself right now, torn between running and staying. God, he was right. She was fighting herself. Every instinct screamed that this was too good to be true, that she should grab whatever she could and flee before the trap snapped shut. But another part, deeper and older, whispered that this was exactly where she was supposed to be. I need proof, she said, about my mother, about the money being real. Cade pulled out his phone, fingers moving across the screen with practiced efficiency. What's your mother's name in the hospital where she's being treated? Alara Ashenvale, Regional Medical Center, Redding, California. More typing. Then he turned the phone toward her. Check your email. Seraphina pulled out her own phone with shaking hands. The email was there. A wire transfer confirmation for $850,000 to Regional Medical Center, designated for Alara Ashenvale's treatment. Timestamp 4 minutes ago. That's... She couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't process that kind of money moving that quickly, that easily. Real Asher finished for her. As promised. Your brother's tuition. $60,000 annually to MIT. More typing. Another email. Transfer confirmation for $240,000 to Massachusetts Institute of Technology, covering 4 years of housing and living expenses for Rowan Ashenvale. Seraphina's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. My father's debts. Already handled, Riker said. $320,000 to Red Mountain Casino. Debt cleared, contract voided. Your father is free of that burden. She stared at the three of them, these stranger kings who had just casually transferred over $1.4 million within minutes of her asking for proof. Why, you don't know me? I haven't agreed to anything. This is insane. It's investment, Cade said. In you, in us, in what we could become together. He stood, offered his hand again. Stay, Seraphina, for 1 month. Let us show you what life could be here. Let yourself explore these bonds without the weight of your family's needs crushing you. Give us 30 days to prove we're not lying about what you are. 1 month, 30 days in this impossible castle with 3 devastatingly intense alphas who looked at her like she was something precious instead of broken. And if at the end of 30 days I want to leave, then you leave, Asher said firmly. No conditions, no strings. The money stays with your family. You walk away free. Though you won't want to, Riker added with absolute confidence. The arrogance should have annoyed her. Instead, it sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with cold. Seraphina looked at Cade's outstretched hand, at the phone showing impossible amounts of money already transferred, at three faces watching her with identical expressions of patient certainty. She thought about her mother getting treatment, her brother finishing MIT, her father free from crushing debt, her family saved. She thought about the bonds humming in her chest, three separate songs harmonizing into something she'd never experienced. Connection, belonging, rightness. She thought about Draven's face as he rejected her, called her defective, unwanted, wrong. And she thought about the possibility, however slim, that maybe she'd never been broken at all. Just sleeping. Serafina placed her hand in Cade's. 1 month, she agreed. 30 days. Then I decide. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong, and the bond flared so brightly she gasped. Behind him, she felt Riker and Asher respond, their own bonds lighting up in resonance. 30 days, Cade agreed. Starting now. He drew her to her feet, and suddenly all three of them were close, surrounding her in a triangle of heat and scent and overwhelming presence. We should start with the basics, Asher said, his calm voice grounding. You've been driving for 3 days. You're exhausted. Let us show you to your room, give you time to rest and process. But Serafina's body had other ideas. Now that the decision was made, now that she'd stopped fighting the pull, the bonds roared to life with urgent intensity. She swayed slightly, head swimming. Riker caught her elbow, steadying her. The contact point burned. Easy. The bonds can be overwhelming at first, especially triad bonds. Your system needs time to adjust. What's happening? Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. The mate bonds are trying to complete, Kate explained, thumb stroking across her knuckles in a gesture that should have been soothing but only made the sensation worse. They want to solidify us, to lock into place permanently, but that requires... He trailed off, leaving the implication hanging. Sex, Serafina finished bluntly. The bonds complete through sexual claiming. Eventually, yes, Asher said, but not necessarily immediately. Bonds can exist in partial states for weeks or even months before claiming. Though I'll admit triad bonds tend to be more insistent than typical singular bonds. Serafina's entire body felt like it was vibrating at a frequency just below visible. Every nerve ending aware, awake, demanding. The exhaustion she'd felt moments ago had been burned away by this new urgency. She looked at the three of them, really looked. Cade with his strategic intelligence and control power. Riker with his warrior's intensity barely leashed. Asher with his calm steadiness anchoring them both. Three devastatingly attractive men who wanted her, who looked at her with hunger and reverence and certainty that she was theirs. The ghostling, the defective Omega, the girl nobody wanted, except these three kings wanted her so badly it radiated from them in waves. I'm a virgin, she said abruptly, needing them to know to understand. I've never, with anyone, Draven and I never got that far, and before him no one was interested. We know, Kate said softly. We can scent it on you. Innocence has a particular quality. Does that bother you? She hated how vulnerable the question sounded. Riker's laugh was rough. Bother us, Serafina, knowing we'll be your first, your only, that you'll never know another's touch. He closed his eyes briefly, jaw clenching. It's the most arousing thing imaginable. But it also means we need to be careful, Asher added quickly. Patient. This isn't something to rush despite what the bonds want. Serafina's hands were shaking again, but not from fear, from want, from need she'd never allowed herself to acknowledge. She'd spent 23 years being told she was undesirable. And now these three were looking at her like she was water, and they were dying of thirst. I don't want to wait, she heard herself say. I've waited my whole life for someone to want me, for something to feel right. This feels right. You feel right. Cade's control cracked slightly, silver eyes darkening to charcoal. Serafina, you're exhausted. You've been through trauma. We don't want you making decisions you'll regret when you're in a clearer headspace. I'm not going to regret this. She stepped closer to him, close enough that their bodies almost touched. For the first time in my life, I feel something other than wrong. I feel desired, wanted, chosen. Don't take that away from me by being too noble. There's nothing noble about what I'm thinking right now, Kate said roughly. Nothing noble at all. Then stop thinking. Serafina reached up, hands settling on his chest, feeling the rapid thunder of his heartbeat under her palms. Kiss me, please. I need to know this is real. For a moment, no one moved. 3 alphas and 1 omega, frozen in tableau, balanced on the knife's edge of decision. Then Cade's hand cupped her face with devastating gentleness. Are you absolutely certain? Yes. Then may I kiss you, Serafina Ashenvale? The fact that he asked, that he requested permission even when the bonds screamed and she'd already said yes, made her decision crystallize into absolute certainty. Please, she whispered. Cade's lips met hers with a control that must have cost him tremendously. She made a small sound pressing closer, and his control fractured. The kiss deepened his tongue, requesting entrance, and she opened for him without hesitation. Cade tasted like whiskey in winter and dark promises. His hand slid into her white hair, angling her head for better access, and the bond between them roared to full brilliance. When they finally broke apart, Serafina was breathing hard, lips swollen, body singing. Behind Cade, Riker and Asher watched with identical expressions of barely restrained hunger. "My turn," Riker said, voice rough as gravel. Serafina nodded beyond words, and Riker stepped forward. Where Cade had been controlled, Riker was fire. His kiss was demanding, consuming all the intensity she'd sensed in him, unleashed in a single point of contact. She gasped against his mouth, and he swallowed the sound, one hand spanning her waist, the other cradling her skull. He kissed her like he was trying to devour her, possess her, mark her from the inside out. When he pulled back, they were both shaking. "Asher," Serafina managed, and the third brother was already there. His approach was different from both brothers. He gathered her close arms, wrapping around her waist, holding her against his body with a gentleness that somehow felt more intimate than Riker's intensity. Then he kissed her, slow, deep, thorough. Like he had all the time in the world and intended to use every second learning exactly what made her melt. By the time all three had kissed her, Serafina could barely stand. The bonds were incandescent, three separate threads now blazing so bright she could see them behind her closed eyelids. "Bedroom," Cade said, voice strained. "Now, before I take you on the floor of this sitting room like an animal." They moved as a unit, the three brothers surrounding her, hands guiding but not forcing as they navigated through corridors to a massive bedroom. The space was dominated by an enormous bed that could easily fit four people draped in silver and navy fabrics. Serafina's heart hammered. This was happening. This was real. Cade turned her to face him, hands framing her face. "We stop the moment you say stop." "Understood. No matter how far we've gone, no matter what's happening, you say the word and everything halts immediately." "What's the word?" Her voice came out breathier than intended. "Mercy," Asher said from behind her. "Your safe word is mercy. Use it if you truly need us to stop." "Otherwise," Riker added, "we're going to learn every sound you can make, every way to make you shake, every limit of pleasure your body can withstand." The words sent heat pooling low in her belly. "Yes, please. I want this." "Then let us undress you," Cade said. "Slowly. We want to savor every moment of this." His hands went to the buttons of her shirt, calloused fingers surprisingly dexterous. One button, two, three, each revealing another inch of pale skin that had never seen the sun, never been touched with desire. Serafina fought the urge to cover herself, to hide the body she'd always been told was wrong. But the way they looked at her, eyes dark with want, made that impossible. "Perfect," Riker breathed as her shirt fell away, leaving her in just her bra and jeans. "Absolutely perfect." Asher's hands settled on her hips, thumbs stroking the strip of skin above her waistband. "May I?" She nodded, and he unfastened her jeans, drawing them down her legs with aching slowness. She stepped out of them, standing before three fully clothed men in nothing but simple cotton undergarments. She should have felt vulnerable, exposed. Instead, she felt powerful, desired, right. "Your turn," she said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "I want to see you too." They undressed with efficient grace, revealing bodies sculpted by training and genetics into weapons of muscle and sinew. Scars marked their skin, testaments to battles fought and survived. They were beautiful and terrifying, and entirely focused on her. Cade reached around her back, fingers finding the clasp of her bra. "May I Yes." The fabric loosened, fell away. Cool air kissed her bare breasts, and she shivered, not from cold, but from the weight of their stares. "I'm small," she said, hating the defensive note in her voice. "I know I'm not perfect," all three said in unison, and somehow that made it true. Riker's hand cupped one small breast with reverent care, thumb brushing over the sensitive peak. Sensation shot straight to her core, and she gasped. "So responsive," he murmured. "I wonder what other sounds we can make you make." Asher's hands went to her hips, fingers hooking in the waistband of her underwear. "Last barrier. May we?" Serafina's breath caught, heart racing, but she nodded. "Yes." The fabric slid down her thighs, leaving her completely bare before them. 23 years of virginity, of untouched flesh, of waiting for someone to want her enough to see past her differences. These three looked at her like she was a miracle. Cade guided her to the bed, laying her down on soft sheets with careful reverence. "We're going to touch you now. Learn what you like. Build your pleasure slowly until you can't take any more." And then, her voice was barely a whisper, Then I'm going to make you mine, Cade said, eyes burning. Claim you completely. Mark your body so every wolf in existence knows you belong to Frost Peak. To us. After Cade, I'll take you, Riker added, voice rough. Different. Harder. Show you what it means to be claimed by a warrior. And when they're finished, Asher said gently, I'll put you back together. Worship every inch of skin they've marked. Make love to you until you understand that this is forever. 3 different approaches, 3 different styles, 3 bonds that would lock into place permanently once this night was complete. Seraphina looked at them, these stranger kings who had seen something in her that her own pack had missed, who had paid over $1 million just for the chance to prove she wasn't broken. Then stop talking, she said, and show me. Cade's hands moved with deliberate slowness, tracing patterns across Seraphina's ribs, her stomach, the curve of her hip. Every touch was a question asked and answered by the way her breath hitched, her body arched, her fingers curled into the sheets. You're trembling, he observed, voice low and controlled, despite the hunger she could see in his silver-gray eyes. I'm nervous, she admitted, and excited, and terrified, all at once. Good. His thumb circled her navel, spiraling outward in increasingly intimate paths. Fear sharpens sensation, makes everything more intense. But the moment it becomes too much, you say the word. Mercy, she whispered, committing it to memory. Mercy, he confirmed. Then his hand moved lower, and thought became impossible. The first touch was feather light, barely contact at all, but Seraphina's entire body jolted like she'd been electrified. No one had ever touched her there. She'd touched herself, brief experimental explorations that had felt shameful and wrong, never pursued to completion. This felt neither shameful nor wrong. This felt inevitable. So responsive, Riker said from where he knelt beside the bed, his storm blue eyes tracking every micro-expression that crossed her face. Look at how she's already flushed, already breathing hard, and we've barely begun. Cade's fingers explored with methodical thoroughness, learning her topography, cataloging what made her gasp versus what made her moan. When he found the small bundle of nerves that made her cry out, he smiled with dark satisfaction. There, that's what you need, isn't it? He circled that spot with maddening precision, building pressure and heat in waves that crashed through her nervous system. Seraphina's hands fisted in the sheets, hips lifting involuntarily, seeking more friction, more pressure, more everything. Please, she heard herself beg, shame burned away by desperate need. Please, what? Cade's voice was patient, relentless. Tell me what you want, Seraphina. I don't know, she gasped. I don't know what comes next. Asher's hand smoothed her white hair back from her face, his touch grounding. You're climbing toward release. Your body knows what to do even if your mind doesn't. Let go. Stop thinking. Just feel. The pressure built impossibly higher, spiraling tighter in her core until it felt like she would shatter from the force of it. Every muscle tensed, every nerve ending, singing her entire world narrowing to the point where Cade's fingers worked with devastating skill. Then it broke. The orgasm crashed through her like a tidal wave, obliterating thought, drowning her in sensations so intense it bordered on pain. She cried out, body convulsing, muscles clenching as pleasure rolled through her in relentless waves. When she finally came back to herself, gasping and trembling, all 3 brothers were watching her with expressions of fierce satisfaction. Beautiful, Asher murmured. Absolutely beautiful. And that was just the beginning, Cade said, withdrawing his hand with careful gentleness. Your body is capable of so much more. We're going to show you exactly how much. Seraphina's mind was still foggy with aftershocks, but she managed to focus on his face. Now, Cade confirmed. He positioned himself between her thighs, the evidence of his own arousal impossible to ignore. This will hurt at first. Your body needs to adjust, but I'll go slowly. Stop me if it becomes too much. She nodded, unable to form words, and he began the careful process of joining their bodies. The pressure was immediate and overwhelming. Seraphina's breath caught, hands flying to Cade's shoulders, fingernails digging into muscle. Breathe, he instructed, holding perfectly still, despite what it must be costing him. Your body needs to relax. Trust me. She tried focusing on her breathing, on the bond humming between them, on the way his eyes never left her face. Gradually, infinitesimally, her muscles unclenched. Cade moved deeper, inch by careful inch, giving her time to adjust. When he finally seated himself completely, they both went still, breathing hard. Okay. His voice was strained, control fracturing at the edges. Okay, she managed. It doesn't hurt anymore. It feels full, strange, but not bad. It gets better. He began to move slow, shallow thrusts that built friction and heat. Much better. He was right. The strangeness transformed into something that made her hips lift to meet his movements, her body learning the rhythm instinctively. The pleasure built differently, this time deeper, more consuming, radiating from her core outward. "Look at me," Cade commanded, and she opened eyes she hadn't realized she'd closed. "I want you to see who's claiming you, who you belong to now." His movements became more purposeful, driving deeper hitting angles that made stars burst behind her eyes. The bond between them flared brilliant white, solidifying, locking into permanent place. When the second orgasm hit, it was deeper than the first, more profound, and she felt Cade follow her over the edge, his own release triggering the final stage of the claiming. His teeth found the junction of her neck and shoulder, biting down with controlled force. The pain was sharp and immediate, but the venom flooding from his fangs transformed it instantly into euphoria. Liquid sunlight rushed through her veins, warm and golden and impossibly good. When Cade released her, licking the wound to seal it, she was floating boneless, completely undone. "One," Riker said, his voice rough with barely contained need. "Two more to go." Cade withdrew, carefully pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Rest a moment. Riker will be different from me. More intense. Are you ready?" Serafina looked at the warrior brother, at the hunger blazing in his storm blue eyes. "Yes, I want all three of you." Riker moved with predatory grace, settling between her thighs. Where Cade had been controlled and methodical, Riker was fire barely leashed. "I won't be as gentle," he warned. "Don't hold back," Serafina surprised herself by saying. "I want to feel everything." Something fierce and possessive flashed across his face. His claiming was entirely different. Harder, faster, more demanding. He drove into her sensitized body with authority that should have been overwhelming, but instead felt perfect, necessary, exactly what some primal part of her craved. Serafina met him thrust for thrust, discovering strength she hadn't known she possessed. Riker's hands were everywhere, claiming and exploring, learning her through touch and rhythm. "Mine," he growled against her throat. "Ours, no one else's, never anyone else's." "Yes," she gasped, nails raking down his back. "Yours. All three of you." When he bit her on the opposite side of her neck from Cade's mark, the dual points of venom created a feedback loop of pleasure so intense she screamed. Her third orgasm shattered her, completely fragmenting her into pieces that she wasn't sure would ever fit back together. Riker's own release followed immediately after, his body going rigid, a sound torn from his chest that was more wolf than human. The second bond locked into place, solid and permanent. Two down. One remaining. Asher gave her time to recover, holding her, while she shook through the aftershocks, whispering soothing words in a language she didn't recognize, but somehow understood. Ancient. Ceremonial. The language of wolves before humans taught them speech. "I don't know if I can do this again," Serafina admitted, her body feeling wrung out, oversensitized. "You can," Asher said with quiet certainty. "The third bond completes the triad. Without it, the structure is unstable." She looked at him, at the calm steadiness that had drawn her from the first moment. "Will it be different again?" "Very different." He positioned himself carefully, supporting her exhausted body with gentle strength. "Riker took you like a warrior claims his prize. Cade took you like a strategist executes his plan. Let me worship you like you're sacred. Because to us, you are." His entry was slow, reverent, giving her hypersensitive body time to adjust. Asher moved like water fluid, impatient and utterly thorough. He paid attention to every sound, every reaction, adjusting to maximize her pleasure, while his own remained secondary. This wasn't about conquest or strategy. This was devotion. "You're extraordinary," he murmured against her lips between kisses. "Not despite your differences. Because of them. Every part of you is exactly as it should be." Tears leaked from the corners of Serafina's eyes, overwhelmed by sensation and emotion in equal measure. No one had ever looked at her this way, touched her like she was something precious instead of broken. The fourth orgasm built slowly, a gradual crescendo rather than sharp peaks. When it finally crested, it felt like coming home, like finding a piece of herself she hadn't known was missing. Asher's claiming bite at the base of her throat, where neck met chest, completed the triangle. Three marks, three bonds, three souls anchored to hers for eternity. The moment all three bonds locked simultaneously, power exploded through Serafina's body. Light erupted from her skin, silver and brilliant, flooding the room with radiance. She felt something inside her that had been dormant for 23 years suddenly wake. Her wolf. The presence was unmistakable, powerful, ancient beyond measure. It surged through her consciousness like a tsunami, And for the first time in her life, Serafina understood what she truly was. Not broken, not defective, just sleeping, waiting for the right bonds to wake her. The light faded gradually, leaving the four of them tangled in sheets, breathing hard, forever changed. "What was that?" Serafina's voice was hoarse. That, Cade said with deep satisfaction, was your wolf recognizing her mates. "The bonds are complete. You're ours now, Serafina Ashenvale, and we are yours." She'd come to Alaska for 30 days, a trial period, now bonded permanently to three Alpha Kings marked and claimed there was no going back. And for the first time in her life, Serafina realized she didn't want to go back. "Sleep," Asher murmured, gathering her against his chest while his brothers curled around them protectively. "Tomorrow we begin your real training. Tomorrow you start learning what it means to be Luna of Frost Peak." Serafina's eyes closed, exhaustion finally claiming her. Her last conscious thought was of three bonds humming in her chest, solid and real and permanent. The ghostling had found her home. 4 weeks passed in a blur of training and discovery. Serafina woke each morning in the massive bed she now shared with three kings tangled in limbs and sheets in the competing scents of pine smoke and rain. The intimacy felt natural as breathing. Pack warriors taught her combat techniques. What she lacked in raw strength, she compensated for with speed and precision. Within 2 weeks, she could hold her own against beta males twice her size. Within 3, she'd disarmed the head trainer in front of the entire pack, earning grudging respect. But the real discoveries came during meditation sessions with Elder Layana the seer who'd prophesied her arrival. "Your empathic tracking is unprecedented," the elderly wolf explained. "You don't just sense emotions. You can follow them like scent trails, find specific individuals across vast distances based solely on their emotional signature." They tested it. Serafina could locate pack members anywhere within 50 miles, tracking the unique frequency of their fear, joy, anger, love. It was disorienting at first, like hearing too many radio stations simultaneously. But she learned to filter, to focus, to hunt specific emotional threads through the noise. Her night vision proved equally valuable. She could navigate the castle grounds in complete darkness, spot threats in shadow that even alpha wolves missed. During a nighttime patrol simulation, she detected and neutralized 4 mock intruders before they'd gotten within 100 yards of the castle walls. The pack's initial skepticism transformed gradually into acceptance. The rescued Omega who couldn't shift was becoming Luna, who didn't need to. But the most significant change was political. 3 weeks after her arrival, delegations from neighboring territories began visiting Frost Peak. Word had spread that the Triad had found their mate, that the prophecy might be true, that the moon-blessed bloodline lived again. The Southern Pack's Alpha Marcus Stoneclaw arrived with an entourage of 20 warriors, his contempt for Serafina obvious from the moment he entered the Great Hall. "And Omega as Luna," his voice dripped disdain as he addressed the assembled court. "Your pack has grown weak, Cade Frostborn. 3 kings sharing 1 defective female. It's unnatural." Serafina felt her mates tense, felt their desire to defend her honor through violence. But she stepped forward before they could act, placing herself between Marcus and the Triad. "This Omega," she said clearly, voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "broke an Alpha Heir's jaw 3 days ago during combat training. This Omega tracked and helped capture a rogue pack that had been evading your own warriors for 6 months. This Omega can sense your fear right now, despite your aggressive posturing." Marcus's eyes widened fractionally. "You dare? I dare question what you've done lately, worth remembering, Alpha Marcus. Besides, insult your hosts and reveal your insecurity." The hall went silent. No one spoke to a visiting Alpha that way. Marcus took a step toward her, aggression rolling off him in waves. "You need to be taught respect." 3 growls erupted simultaneously from behind her. The Triad rose as one power, flooding the room, making every wolf present instinctively lower their eyes. All except Serafina, who held Marcus's gaze without flinching. "Touch her," Cade said softly, "and you die where you stand." "Challenge her," Riker added, "and you challenge all 3 of us." "Insult her again," Asher finished, "and your entire pack will be barred from our territories permanently." The unified front was devastating. Marcus backed down, hands raised in reluctant surrender. "My apologies," he ground out. "I spoke hastily." "Accepted," Serafina said graciously. "Please join us for the evening meal. I'm curious to hear about your territory's success with the new hunting grounds." The shift from confrontation to diplomacy was seamless, and she saw respect flicker across Marcus's face despite himself. By the end of the evening, he was speaking to her as an equal, asking her advice on pack management. It became a pattern. Visitors arrived skeptical and left convinced. Serafina's combination of empathic awareness, Strategic thinking and genuine kindness won over even the harshest critics. The pack elders began seeking her counsel. She could sense when wolves were lying, could read true intentions beneath false words, could navigate pack politics with preternatural skill. Elder Brutus, who'd questioned her worthiness at the first council meeting, publicly apologized after she'd helped mediate a territorial dispute that had lasted 3 generations. I was wrong about you, he admitted before the entire council. You are precisely the Luna we needed, not despite your differences, but because of them. The formal coronation ceremony was scheduled for the end of her 4th week. Every pack member would attend, would witness her official acceptance, as Luna would pledge their loyalty to her leadership. But 2 days before the ceremony, everything changed. Serafina woke in the middle of the night, gasping hand pressed to her chest. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. She could feel it through the bonds, a wrongness that made her skin crawl, and her wolf paced restlessly. What is it? Cade was instantly alert, all 3 mates responding to her distress. Someone's here, she whispered. Someone who shouldn't be. Someone who wants to hurt us. They didn't question her. Within minutes, the castle was on alert, warriors mobilizing, perimeter defenses activated. Serafina followed the thread of malicious intent, tracking it through the castle corridors like a bloodhound on a scent. It led her to the guest wing, to rooms occupied by the delegation from Silverwood Pack, her former pack, who'd arrived yesterday with diplomatic overtures and gifts. The door stood ajar. Inside, she found them. 5 wolves she recognized from her childhood, including the beta who'd laughed loudest when Draven rejected her. They were gathered around a map of the castle, marking guard positions, discussing entry points, planning an attack time for the coronation ceremony. And leading them, directing the planning with cold efficiency, was Draven Blackthorn himself. Serafina's entrance froze them all in place. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Draven smiled, the expression twisted and bitter. Serafina, I was wondering when you'd figure it out. Your new tracking abilities really are impressive. You're planning to attack during my coronation. Her voice was steady despite the fury building in her chest. Why, Batisa? Because you were mine first. Draven's casual tone couldn't hide the possessive rage beneath. I rejected you when you were worthless. Now you're valuable, mated to the most powerful alphas in the Northern Territories, positioned to rule an entire kingdom. That should have been mine. You should have been mine. You rejected me, she reminded him coldly, publicly, brutally, called me defective, worthless, a stain on your bloodline. I made a mistake. He stepped toward her, and she saw the delusion in his eyes. But the mate bond was mine first. I can reclaim it. Kill the triad, take you back to Silverwood, bond with you properly this time. The other wolves shifted uncomfortably, clearly uneasy with their alpha's obsession, but loyal enough to follow his commands. You can't reclaim what you severed, Serafina said. The bond between us is dead. What I have with the triad is completely different. Then I'll kill them and take you anyway. Draven's mask of civility dropped completely. You'll learn to accept it eventually. Your bloodline is too valuable to waste on shared mates. Footsteps thundered in the corridor. The triad arrived with 24 warriors surrounding the Silverwood delegation completely. Draven's hand went to the knife at his belt, but Riker was faster, disarming him before he could draw the blade. Within seconds, all 5 traitors were restrained, weapons confiscated. You plan to attack during a sacred ceremony, Cade said, voice colder than Arctic wind. To murder your hosts, violate guest rights, steal our mate. These are death-worthy offenses. Execute them, Riker suggested, and several warriors growled agreement. But Serafina held up her hand, and the room fell silent. She walked slowly to stand before Draven, looking at the male who'd rejected her so viciously just months ago. You had your chance with me, she said quietly. You threw it away because you couldn't see past surface differences. Now you want me back because I'm valuable. Not because you care about me. Not because you recognize my worth as a person. Because I'm a commodity you regret losing. Draven's jaw clenched, but he didn't deny it. You will return to Silverwood territory. Serafina continued, her voice carrying authority that surprised even her. You will never set foot in the Northern Territories again. If you do, you will be executed on sight. Your pack will be informed of your crimes against guest rights. Banishment? Draven looked stunned. Not execution. Death would be too easy, Serafina said. You get to live with your choices. Live knowing that the female you rejected is now a queen. Live watching her thrive while you rot in the consequences of your own cruelty. That's far worse than a quick death. She turned to the Silverwood warriors. You followed your alpha's orders. That loyalty, however misplaced, is noted. You're free to return home. But spread the word Seraphina Ashenvale, once called Ghostling, once rejected and exiled, is now Luna of Frost Peak, and she is not as forgiving as she appears. The warriors were escorted from the territory immediately, Draven's protests echoing uselessly as he was forcibly removed. When they were gone, Seraphina sagged against Asher, adrenaline fading, leaving her shaking. You showed him mercy, Kate observed. I showed him truth, she corrected. Mercy would have been forgetting. He gets to remember. Forever. That's worse. 2 days later, the coronation proceeded as planned. The Great Hall was filled to capacity. Wolves from a dozen territories gathered to witness the ceremony. Seraphina wore silver and white colors of the moon in winter. The dress was elegant without being ostentatious, marking her as Luna, without diminishing her as warrior. Elder Lyanna performed the ceremony, ancient words in the language of their ancestors, invoking the moon goddess's blessing. The triad knelt before her in sequence. Cade first pledging his strategy and mind to her service. Riker second pledging his strength and protection. Asher third pledging his wisdom and steady heart. Then the crown. Silver worked into the shape of moon phases embedded with stones that caught light and threw it back multiplied. It settled on her white hair like it had been made specifically for her, because it had been. The crown had been forged the day after she'd arrived, the triad certain even then that she would accept it eventually. All hail Luna Seraphina, Elder Lyanna proclaimed, moon-blessed triad mate queen of Frost Peak. The hall erupted in howls, the traditional wolf acknowledgement of new leadership. Even the visiting packs joined in recognizing her authority. Seraphina stood before them, all the rejected Omega who'd become a queen, and felt her wolf surge forward in response to the pack's acceptance. For the first time in 23 years, she felt the shift begin. It didn't hurt like she'd always heard it would. It felt natural, inevitable, like her body finally remembering what it had always been designed to do. Bones reshaped muscles, reformed skin became fur. The transformation took perhaps 30 seconds from start to finish. When it was complete, Seraphina stood on 4 paws instead of 2 feet. She was larger than a typical Omega wolf, nearly the size of a beta. Her fur was pure white, unmarked, pristine as fresh snow. And her eyes, visible, even in wolf form, glowed the same amethyst color they always had. The white wolf of prophecy. Finally awakened. Finally home. The pack's howls intensified, joyous and reverent. The moon-blessed had returned. The prophecy was fulfilled. Seraphina's 3 mates shifted as well, their own wolves massive and powerful, flanking her protectively. 4 wolves standing before their pack, united, complete. She'd come to Alaska broken and desperate. She'd found her destiny. 3 months later, spring arrived in Frost Peak. Seraphina stood on the private balcony of the royal chambers, one hand resting on the gentle swell of her belly. 3 heartbeats fluttered beneath her palms, steady and strong. Triplets. 1 from each mate, the healers had confirmed with awe and reverence. The door opened behind her, Cade's arms wrapped around her waist, his hands covering hers over their growing children. How are you feeling? He murmured against her hair. Perfect, she said honestly. And she was. Below in the courtyard, her mother Elara walked arm in arm with Elder Lyanna, discussing the expansion of the healing gardens. 3 months of treatment had worked miracles. The cancer was gone, her mother's hair growing back silver gray and thick. She'd moved into the castle's guest wing, permanently claiming she wanted to be close when her grandchildren arrived. Near the stables, her father Theron worked alongside the stable master. His hands steady, his eyes clear. 90 days sober. He'd found purpose here, found peace in honest work, found forgiveness for himself. The gambling debts that had nearly destroyed him were distant memory now. And in the library visible through the western windows, Rowan sat surrounded by books and scrolls, having graduated MIT, a full year early with highest honors. He now served as the PAC's technology and communications advisor, bridging ancient wolf traditions with modern innovation. The shy 19-year-old who'd hugged her goodbye in California had transformed into a confident young man finding his own path. Her family, saved, whole, happy. Riker and Asher joined them on the balcony, completing their circle as they always did. 4 souls permanently bound. Regrets, Asher asked softly, the question ritual by now. Seraphina looked out over Frost Peak territory, at the pack that had accepted her, at the castle that had become home, at the mates who'd seen her worth when her own pack had been blind, at the 3 lives growing inside her, proof that broken things could create miracles. None, she said firmly, not a single one. She thought about the girl she'd been just months ago, the ghostling, rejected, exiled, convinced she was fundamentally wrong. That girl was gone. In her place stood Luna Seraphina Moonblessed, queen carrier of the next generation of Frost Peak royalty, a female who'd been told she was worthless and had proven every single one of them wrong. The rejected shall rise, Cade quoted the coronation blessing, his hand warm over hers. The cursed shall reign, Riker continued, pressing a kiss to her temple. The dormant shall wake, Asher finished, his voice filled with quiet wonder. And legends are born, Seraphina whispered, feeling her three children move beneath her hands, each one a miracle she'd never thought possible. Sometimes the worst rejection leads to the greatest destiny. Sometimes being broken is just another word for becoming. Sometimes the monsters who call you defective are simply too blind to see the magic right in front of them. Draven Blackthorn had called her a stain on his bloodline. Now she carried a bloodline that would change the supernatural world forever. Moonblessed and Triad bonded a combination that hadn't existed in 3 centuries. Her children would be powerful, extraordinary, just like their mother. The ghostling was dead. Long live the queen. Seraphina smiled, leaning back into the warmth of her mates, surrounded by family and pack and love she'd never dared dream possible. The future stretched before her, bright and beautiful and hers, finally completely eternally hers.